Hello, my name is Claire Taylor, and I'm here today with my research partner, Nagao, and we're going to be talking about a new space that we've designed on our campus. This is Lounge Melt. It's our social language learning space. Let me share the history. It was set up in 2010 by some students who were given a classroom to use and some donated furniture. And by 2012, it was not in a great state with a lot of clutter and some broken furniture, and students were really reluctant to use it like this. Several cycles of action research followed, mainly focusing on design changes like glass walls and doors, so you could see what was happening in the space from outside, and that made it easier to enter. And lots of changes to the actual space, like carpets, curtains, sofas, beanbags, toys, guitars, hot drinks, things to entice students into the space and make a warm, playful atmosphere so that conversation flowed very easily. We also secured funding for full-time learning advisors and for cultural events like Christmas parties and things like that, for some learning resources, and for a rebranding of the space to Lounge Melt. And these were really quite a success, and the average number of users went from 1.45 per day to over 29.85. And a real thriving learning community had formed, and we were really happy with that. But over time, of course, new problems started to emerge. Sometimes at lunchtime, you had so many students, there was nowhere to sit or even stand. And there's a problem that many students were attracted to the space to study, and they were trying to do something quite serious and focused, and struggling to sort of write an IELTS essay when a group of students were playing a noisy game of Jenga, and the more students were banging out an Ed Sheeran song on the guitar, and they just couldn't focus. And the students who were singing and playing and talking sometimes seemed inhibited and felt like they should do less or make less noise because other students were studying. So that was a problem. We also had no private space for advising. So advising happened in Melt in front of all the other students, which is not always ideal. And the Melt staff, the learning advisors, were kind of inhibited by the language policy, which was no Japanese. And, you know, as many of you know, if you're doing advising with a low-level student, it really helps to be able to use the L1. And finally, it seemed small, but we had no washing up facilities. So we were serving coffee, but we had to carry the cups up to the 4th floor to wash the cups up, which was a really big hassle. So around this time, the healthcare room, which was immediately adjacent to Melt, became available because the healthcare room moved to a different building. And so there was a space there that already had these booths for patient beds. And it seemed like it could solve a lot of our problems if we expanded into that space. And we put a design together, a very loose design. And then over time, with a lot of negotiation with the administration and with the company that were going to do the refurbishments and the logo printing, we designed a new space called Annex. This is a quick look of what it looks like from the corridor, and then I'll show you inside. Annex has a space at the front for individual and collaborative quiet study, and it has partitioned booths for distraction-free individual work of different types. And the color scheme is quite different to Melt. Research indicates that warmer colors like orange and yellow support socialization, and cooler colors like blue and green support concentration. And other research in work and study environments suggests that warm colors like orange and yellow energize, but blue calms. So we've got this much cooler color scheme. The lighting is different as well. We have pink warm lighting in Melt, but here we have white, bright fluorescent lights because that leads to increased, or it's associated with increased learning. The chairs and the whiteboard, everything is designed to be a little bit office style, to have students, to kind of cue students to think about their career aspirations and their future goals and keep them on track to studying towards those, achieving those goals. So with the design, we were trying to create two kind of contrasting environments, one for play and fun, and the other for work and concentration, one more sociable and intimate, and the other more sort of for individual or even collaborative learning. And lounge for being here and now, being present in the moment with your friends. But in annex, where students are sort of doing hard work that takes effort and you have to keep persisting at it, like studying TOEIC vocabulary or something like that, we want them to think about the future, be future oriented, think about their goal. In MELT, it's kind of effort-free, incidental learning, but in annex, it's more for, we wanted to create a space for explicit learning, for effortful, purposeful activity. And sort of cheerful, lively, energizing atmosphere, but a kind of calmer, more focused atmosphere in annex. And you can see we try to communicate that through the logos as well, which are on the windows and doors. So the items in the booths support the activity that the booth is for, like the adjustable desk and chair that you can get to just the right height for you, so you can really focus on your study. And they also help the students read the space so they can see what to do without needing someone to explain that to them. So if they see the mirror and the mic and the stand that they can put their phone into to record their presentation, they can see that they can use the mirror to practice their gestures. One of the key features of annex is the text that are on the walls. So in the recitation booth, we have an affirmation, I can and I will. And there's research showing that affirmations can help people achieve a peak performance mindset. And that's really useful for students if they're about to perform in a recitation or a presentation. Most of the other wall texts are designed to nudge students towards developing a growth language learning mindset. We'd like students to believe that their success in language learning depends on factors like effort or strategy use, rather than believing it's just something that you're born naturally good at. So researchers have shown that this kind of intervention can break down a fixed mindset over time. And Leon here, it's talked about one study where students were logging into a system for learning math, and some of them could see at the top of the screen, every time you learn a new math problem, you grow your math brain. And students who were seeing that at the top of their screen every time, months and months later, were getting better results than students who hadn't seen that message. So it was quite impressive for something so small to have such an effect and such a long-term effect. Jaeger and Walton have suggested that it's recursive, so students start to take more opportunities that are available to them, and that leads to more success, and this just leads to an upward cycle. We paid a lot of attention to the font, trying to get something that was a little bit cool and stylish, and also to the height of the text. Research shows that people automatically associate positive affect with what is high in their visual space, and you need to look up whether you're sitting or standing to see any of the quotes on the walls. So the space was almost ready around March or April of 2020 when the pandemic hit. So we weren't able to do a big full blast opening. It was a very soft opening because the students were all learning remotely, and there were only a handful of students coming into the campus who didn't have good study environments at home and were using a place on the campus to work, but all the classes were remote. But during this early period, when when it was very empty all the time, we decided it would be nice to explore the reactions and the responses of very early visitors and users, and to try to use what we learned from that research for future orientations, for promotion and development of the space. And a few things influenced our research approach here. First, in the summer, we had a virtual open campus, and the PR team asked the students to go around the campus with these little blackboards and to write their reaction or their feeling for each space, the swimming pool, the dining hall. And this is what the student wrote in Annex. And we realized that, the students are really feeling this inspiration from the design of the space and especially the quotes on the wall. And another thing that influenced our research approach was watching, a few teachers and occasionally other visitors, how they reacted to the space. And everyone did the same thing. It was completely unexpected. They stood in front of each quote and just felt the quote for a while, looked at it and just stood there feeling it. And then they moved to the next partition or space and just looked at that quote and felt that for a while. And then they went from space to space. And finally they chose one and went back to it and said, this is me. This one is me. I feel this one. And that was really interesting because we designed the quotes to support different kinds of activity, but people were really trying to find the one that resonated for them. And that was something we wanted to incorporate into our research approach because it was really interesting. So we gathered some student responses. We did some semi-structured interviews. We interviewed just 4 students. There weren't many users of the space at this time. We tried to cover both genders and different year groups, so we got some variety in the responses. We've got informed consent to interview and record, and then we repeated the responses orally into a voice-to-text application to aid the transcription. And we did the interviews in the students' preferred language, which was Japanese for 3 of the students and translanguaging between English and Japanese for the other one.
So students were asked to read aloud each sign, slogan, and piece of wall text and to explain what each means. When students were unsure of the meaning, translation into Japanese was scaffolded for them. Then they were asked for their first reaction to that space or booth. Next, students visiting for the first time were asked to visualize their future use of the space. Following this, the participants were asked which area resonates most for them and why. Finally, participants were asked how they use Annex differently to Lounge Melt. The responses show that the new users can read the new learning space using cues from the design in conjunction with the signs, which they demonstrated they could read with confidence and understanding. The design of Annex with its booths and tools made it easy for the new visitors to understand how the different areas could be used. Also, the responses shows that the students can read the design differences between the Annex and Lounge Melt and understand how to use the 2 spaces differently. They responded to the colors and light in the room. Students were able to articulate how design differences affected their mood in each space and created the different atmospheres of the 2 spaces. As well as noticing the different feelings of the spaces, the students commented on the different activities they felt appropriate to each space and envisioned themselves using the space. There was real diversity in the students' responses and reactions. Different physical spaces appealed to different students. For 2 students, the deskless study booth appealed strongly. For another student, it was the customizable study booth, which held strong appeal. In the same way, different wall text resonated with different students. Students identified with a particular text, sometimes relating it to their past experiences. The students also related the messages in the wall text to their current needs, considering the setbacks and challenges they have experienced. In this case, the student had just got rejected for a job she had applied for on the grounds of her gender and was feeling frustrated and despondent about her future facing such discrimination. She recognized that the quote could be a source of support to herself and other women facing discrimination. Several of the participants demonstrated that they envisioned the affordances of the spaces. Participants noted how the language policy, proximity of peer, and staff support, and the affordances provided by the physical space could help them study in the future. The students reflected on their own needs as learners and how the space could address these needs. When it came to reading the wall quotes, the participants could read them aloud, but most of them needed scaffolding to understand the wall text, especially the longer quotes. Participants saw the wall text as affordances in themselves, showing that they intended to use the quote as a resource to motivate themselves and boost their own confidence. So the responses helped us formulate ideas for promoting annex and providing effective orientation to the space. Okay, this is one idea that we have already put into action. To maximize the potential of the wall quote intervention, we wanted to have support for reading, understanding, and thinking about the quotes. We decided to create video clips in which students read aloud and translate the wall quotes. Using a QR code, these clips can be accessed directly with a smartphone from the space, a form of augmented reality. How did we make these plays at low cost? We put the movie files on YouTube, made the QR codes, and printed them on glossy photo paper, cut them to size on plastic plates, then coated them with UV resistant spray. And we attached them on the wall with traceless and removable double-sided tape. A video like this starts playing on the student's smartphone as soon as they scan the QR code on the wall.
This says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. In Japanese, 私たちは繰り返し行うことがそのまま自分の姿になる。卓越性とは行為ではなく習慣である。
So we've been using the QR codes for orientations and open campus, and it's been going really well. And I'd just like to close now by sharing this image of what's happening on the ground in Annex as more and more students are making their way back to campus and more classes are becoming face-to-face. Students are in Annex from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. They're studying seriously all the time. And there's this really strong study community is forming in there. But we are noticing that elements of play are creeping over from Melt into Annex. This is G4. He's one of Melt's pets. And students usually snuggle with G4 while they're talking to help keep them relaxed. But we're finding more and more that G4 ends up in Annex supporting the students while they're focusing on their studies. So perhaps it's not possible to completely separate work from play, but we still feel that it's good to give students the choice and to have the option of having the two different environments.